In Moddio, you'll commonly see global variables, entity variables, and attributes. Global variables live outside of any specific player or game object. They're persistent for everyone. Any changes here affect all players, no matter who is currently in the game. Entity variables are unique pieces of data that consist inside of a specific entity or player. For example, a player 1 could have a coins variable tracking only that player's coin count. Attributes work in a very similar manner to entity variables, but they're typically built-in properties that we can create, like health or other stats. We can also add extra options to these to make them visually more appealing. Now here we can see a kind of a small example. The global variables exist outside, not outside of the game, but kind of outside of the game within the players. So whether these players exist or not, the global variables will stay there and stay persistent. Whereas entity variables and attributes exist, kind of giving them to the players depending on whether they exist or not. So if player 1 exists, it will get its own entity variable or its own attribute. If player 2 exists, it will get a copy of entity variables or attributes, and etc., etc. Every player that joins your game will get a copy of these two things. Now let's look at an example inside of Moddio. Here I've loaded my template for new hunt and gather. Now in here, we're going to take a look at the environments tab. Now one way to add an entities variable is by going to the entities variable and add new. You can select the data type, give it a key, and a value. However, the way I've added this is I've gone into my survivor, and this might make a bit more sense because usually the attribute we want or the variable we want will exist inside of a specific unit. So here we can do similar. We can add a new variable and add it this way. You can give it a total coins like this. Now I'm going to hit cancel, but because I already have total coins right here, you can see I set the number to 0 and added total coins. Now what we need to do is add a new coin or an object to actually make this work. We'll go to coins or items, and you can do this by adding a new item, and it can create a consumable. Now in my consumable item, coin, I've simply added the coin sheet and renamed it to coin. And that's it. That's all we need to do here. I'm going to save and apply for my player. And now to make this work, what I'm going to do is go to my survivor script. You don't have to do this here, but I've decided to put it in the player script to make a bit more sense. And I've added a trigger that is when an item enters this entity sensor. So we're checking for a specific item. Now, similarly, you could do when a unit enters the sensor's item, and there's a lot of these sort of triggers. So do take a look at them. Like, okay, here we go. We have when a unit enters this entity sensor, but we remember that the coin is an item, right? So that's why we're using this trigger. Now, we know that an item has entered our sensor, but we need to check for which item. So we're going to check for the item type, doing this. If the item type of the last triggering item is a coin, we're just doing a simple item type comparison. And we're checking the item type of the last triggering item, which is the item that just triggered, on this script is equal to the coin that we just created. You can check for a specific item. If it is, well, all we need to do is set the variable of the total coins. So here we can get the variable. You'll see it lets me pick the total coins of this entity or the player. We're going to take of this entity script as the total coins plus 1. So we're essentially setting the variable of total coins to its current total coins plus 1. So for example, if I had 10 total coins, I would set it to 10 plus 1. And then just to visualize this, I've created a visual text, and then it's just going to pop above the player. And then, of course, we need to destroy the coin. All right, so let's save and apply. And what I'm going to do, or what I've done in my game here, is I've manually put my coins in my scene. So once I hit play, you'll see my coins are on here. I've just put them in my map. So in my map here, you can see that I've simply gone to the entities tool and added it this way. I can add one more, go back to play, and I just popped one right there, but I can collect another and you can see that it goes to 2 and 3. And that's an example of how we use entity variables inside of Moddio.